By the time the fire truck had to back all the way down my driveway because it could not turn around. The HOA president was still insisting those 3 concrete barricades were just decorative planters. I was standing on the far side of the little creek, with my arms crossed next to my stranded car and my very real house, while the sheriff looked at her and said slow and careful, "Ma'am, you realize you just blocked the only road to this man's home, right?" That was the moment I stopped feeling like some annoying rule breaker and started thinking, yeah, a judge is going to love this. My name is Miles Hanley, and all I really wanted was simple. A quiet house at the end of a cul-de-sac, a little workshop in the garage, and reliable Wi-Fi, so I could do my job in peace. I got 2 out of 3. I live, or at least technically live, in a neighborhood called Willow Bend Landing. One of those HOA suburbs, wrapped around a decorative pond and a skinny creek. The kind of place where the grass is always exactly 3 inches high. The mailbox is all match and grown. Adults argue online about wreath sizes like it is a matter of national security. My house sits on the far side of that creek, reached by a single 1-lane concrete bridge the developer poured years ago. The listing called it charming private access. The county calls it my legal ingress and egress, and I call it the only reason my packages and the fire department can actually reach me. You know what I mean. On paper, it is simple. My plat map and closing documents say that bridge is part of the recorded easement serving my property, and the county fire marshal signed off on it. In real life, there was one big glitch in the system, and her name was Paula Kensington. Paula is the kind of HOA president who treats a subdivision like a tiny kingdom. Perfect silver bob, pastel cardigans, pearls laminated covenants in the passenger seat, and that tight smile people get when they love rules more than they love people. She says we when she means me, drags 2 board members along to nod on cue, and walks the streets like she is inspecting troops. My first run-ins with her were small. She rang my doorbell at 7 a.m. because my trash can was still at the curb and quoted Section 4 at me. I got a letter about my non-approved flag, a support local libraries flag, which apparently was too radical for Willow Bend Landing. I am not wired for constant confrontation, so at first I just moved the trash can, took down the flag, rolled my eyes, and tried to get on with my life. That worked, until I touched the bridge. The concrete railings on that little bridge were peeling and rusting. Every time I drove over it bugged me a little more. I am the kind of person who fixes squeaky hinges just because I hear them. So one weekend I picked up a wire brush primer and a gallon of conservative dark charcoal paint. I scraped, primed, and painted those railings until they looked clean solid, and honestly, better than when the developer left them. It matched my shutters. It did not clash with anything. It was as boring and reasonable as paint gets. 3 days later, I got an email from Paula with the subject line, "Urgent. Unauthorized modification of common structure." According to her, I had illegally altered the appearance of the Willow Bend Landing pedestrian vehicular bridge, a common element under HOA control, and the board would be discussing appropriate remedies including removal of my unauthorized changes. I stared at the email, stared at the bridge, and laughed in that uncomfortable way you do when you are not sure if something is a joke. Then I did what I thought any normal adult would do. I wrote back, attached the plat map and my closing documents, and said, "Hi, Paula. Per county records, this bridge is the legal access to my parcel and part of my recorded easement. I am responsible for maintenance, and the county fire marshal signed off on it. Happy to share documents. Thanks, Miles." I figured she would not be thrilled, but I honestly thought that would be the end of it. Instead, that email was the starting gun. Violation notices started landing in my mailbox like clockwork. Unauthorized alteration of common property, the paint. Encroachment on HOA easement, my 2 little potted plants at the driveway end of the bridge. Improper use of bridge structure. My contractor parked his truck there while unloading a water heater. Each notice came with a daily fine printed at the bottom, like a slow drip out of my account. She followed up with reminders, then sternly worded, final warnings, and when that did not scare me, she tried theatrics. One afternoon, I turned onto my street and saw bright orange cones blocking both ends of the bridge and a laminated sign that said, HOA notice, temporary closure, bridge under review for safety and aesthetic compliance. Do not cross. There was no construction, no inspector, just my bridge, and some plastic pretending to be authority. I moved the cones and drove home. Later, a neighbor sent me ring footage of Paula marching out putting the cones back and muttering about non-compliant members, like she was narrating a documentary. She started telling people at the pool that my bridge might be condemned, that I was endangering the community, that she might have to restrict my access to amenities. I had been the quiet kid most of my life, the one who got blamed because it was easier, and I could feel that old heaviness creeping back in. So I did something different this time. I stopped trying to win her over and quietly started building a case. I kept every letter. I took photos of the bridge, the cones, the signs. I wrote down dates and times in a notebook by my front door. It felt ridiculous, right up until the day it did not. My line in the sand showed up on a random Monday in the form of 3 concrete planters and a gate. I left to get groceries, came back, and the bridge looked like a checkpoint. 3 waist-high concrete planters, full of ornamental grass, were lined up across the lane, and behind them was a black metal gate with a lock and a shiny sign that said, "Bridge closed to vehicular traffic, pedestrian access only, by order of the board." On the far side of that barricade was my car, my garage, my house. I parked on the street and just sat there for a minute, hands on the steering wheel, feeling my pulse in my ears. Then I grabbed my phone and called Paula. She answered in her usual bright tone. "Miles high." "You blocked my bridge," I said. "You put concrete and a locked gate across the only road to my house." Her voice went sweet and cold at the same time. "This is a safety measure, Miles. The bridge was never intended for regular vehicle traffic. The board has a duty to protect the community's liability. You can park on the street and walk. Plenty of people in Europe do it." I actually laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. "This is not Europe," I said. "This is my driveway. You do not get to cut me off from my own home because you do not like my paint. If you have concerns, you can submit them in writing," she said, and hung up. So I carried my groceries across that bridge, one heavy bag at a time, feeling like a visitor on my own property. And by the time I set the last one down, I knew I was done playing nice. I started calling people who actually have badges and codes instead of clipboards and gossip. County zoning, the clerk's office, the fire marshal. Every time I said, "My HOA blocked the only access road to my house," there was a beat of silence, then some version of, "They did what?" A couple days later, I woke up to the sound of a diesel engine, and that particular quiet that means something serious is happening outside. When I stepped onto my porch, there was a fire truck at the end of the street, a sheriff's cruiser behind it, and a tow truck idling nearby. The fire captain was standing at my bridge, staring at the barricades. "This is his only access?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I said. Has been since the place was built. He shook his head. That is a problem. Paula showed up in her pastel cardigan, like she had been summoned by the word authority. These are purely decorative, she told them. Traffic calming measures. He can park outside the gate and walk. We have standards. The sheriff looked at her like she had grown a second head. Let me get this straight, he said. You blocked the only access road to his property. It is an HOA-controlled common bridge, she answered, hugging her binder. The board voted. He violated aesthetic guidelines. The fire captain turned to me. Mr. Hanley, did you approve this installation? I crossed my arms, felt oddly calm, and said, Nope, but the judge I am seeing next week is going to love it. After they took photos and measurements, a county official pulled me aside and said quietly, You are going to want an attorney. This is not a good look for them. I did not grow up thinking call a lawyer was an option for people like me, but I also had never had someone literally lock a gate across my driveway and call it decoration. So I found a real estate attorney named Claire Mooney. Small office, sharp eyes, zero patience for HOA theatrics. I brought my folders, deed plat map, every letter, all the photos, and spread them across her desk. She flipped through them slowly, eyebrows climbing. So they blocked the only ingress and egress to your house without county approval, told you to hike your life across a footbridge, and fined you for using the access that is literally in your easement, she said. That is about it, I said. She leaned back and smiled. Okay, I love this for us. She explained phrases I had never heard outside a TV show. Easement interference, breach of fiduciary duty, injunctive relief with attorney's fees. And then she started making calls. The fire marshal faxed a letter saying the barricades violated fire code. Within a week, she filed a lawsuit against Willow Bend Landing HOA, the board, and Paula by name, asking the court to order the barricades removed, forbid the HOA from touching my easement award damages and fees, and if necessary, bring in outside management, if the board could not be trusted. Paula did what Paula does. She sent a long, dramatic email to the entire neighborhood about how she had been forced to act to protect safety from my wild crime of painting a bridge. What she did not count on was how fast a public lawsuit spreads. A neighbor whose brother works at the clerk's office pulled the filing, posted screenshots in the neighborhood Facebook group, and a local drama page picked it up with a caption like, HOA allegedly blocks guy's only bridge. Guy sues fire marshal, says absolutely not. People who had rolled their eyes at Miles and his bridge started quietly asking, if they can do that to him, what can they do to me? That was the twist. The fear she had used on everyone else finally turned around and fixed itself on her. By the time we walked into the first court hearing, the power dynamic had flipped. I went in with Claire on one side and a few neighbors sitting behind us. Paula walked in clutching her binder like a life jacket, her HOA lawyer trailing behind her. The judge, a woman named Judge Herrera, had the exact expression of someone who has seen every flavor of neighborhood drama and is not impressed by any of it. Claire laid out the story: the easement, the fire code, the barricades, the fines, the letters, the fire marshal's letter, the photos. Then Judge Herrera turned to the HOA attorney and started asking very simple questions. Did your client obtain an engineer's report before blocking this bridge? No. Did they seek county approval? No. Did they receive any communication from the fire marshal authorizing closure? No. Paula tried to jump in with a speech about community safety and aesthetics. The judge raised one hand. Ms. Kensington, you have an attorney. You will sit down. Then she turned to me and asked how long my access had been blocked, how I got to my house, what I had to cancel. I told her about 6 weeks of parking across the creek, carrying everything in by hand, canceling a refrigerator delivery because the truck could not cross, knowing that if I had a medical emergency, an ambulance would hit a wall of concrete planters. Claire slid the photo of the fire truck stuck at the barricades across the table. Judge Herrera looked at it for a long moment, then looked straight at Paula. Did you personally approve the placement of these barricades? She asked. Paula admitted she coordinated it. Did you know this bridge is the only road access to his home? Technically, yes, but he could always park and walk, and in Europe. The judge cut her off. This is not Europe, Ms. Kensington. This is a residence in this county, and you intentionally obstructed his legal access without authority. That is not a minor policy dispute. That is serious. Then she said the words that changed everything. She granted immediate injunctive relief. The HOA had to remove every barricade by the end of the next day and stop interfering with my easement while the case continued. She made it very clear she was interested in awarding damages and attorney's fees, and based on what she had heard, she was also considering whether the board had breached its duty badly enough to require outside management. Standing there in courtroom view, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Not just relief, but balance. The rules that had been weaponized against me were finally being applied to the person who swung them. A few weeks later, after more paperwork than I ever want to see again, the final ruling came down. In plain English, it said, "The bridge is part of my recorded easement. The HOA had no authority to block it. They acted in reckless disregard of safety and owner rights. They are permanently barred from interfering with my access. They have to pay my attorney's fees and damages. The association has to be placed under professional management for at least 3 years, and Paula is removed from any position of authority and banned from holding office during that time." She did not just lose a case. She lost the little throne she had built out of other people's fear. When the management company truck pulled into Willow Bend Landing, people came outside to watch. The new manager, a guy named Tom, stood by my bridge and said, "Our job is to keep the grass mowed, the budget balanced, and nobody's bridge blocked. We are not here to run a dictatorship." Then he had a crew take down the gate and haul away the concrete planters. When the last one lifted off, neighbors clapped. Paula watched from her porch, arms folded, her HOA president nameplate, already gone from the clubhouse door. Later, every mailbox got a letter on HOA letterhead apologizing for what the previous board had done. The judge even required a community meeting where Tom put up a slide titled, "What happens when an HOA oversteps? Don't do this," with a photo of my barricaded bridge and a big red X over it. Paula had to sit there while everyone stared at the screen and then slowly turned to look at her. The financial part hurt too. The legal fees and damages hit the HOA reserves hard, so there was a special assessment. At the annual meeting, when Tom explained that everyone had to chip in to pay for the bridge litigation, you could feel the room fill with quiet anger. Heads turned toward Paula. She stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, as her neighbors realized they were writing checks because she could not leave my bridge alone. Life in Willow Bend Landing is quieter now. The grass is still 3 inches. The mailboxes still match, but the vibe has shifted from tiny cult with bylaws to mildly over-organized suburb, and I can live with that. My bridge is open, freshly painted, still charcoal, with a boring little sign that says, "Authorized vehicle access only." And for the first time in a long time, My home actually feels like mine. If there is a lesson in all this, it is that rules are not the problem. It is people like Paula and what they do with them. An HOA can tell you where to put your trash can. It cannot legally cut you off from your own house just to make a point. So I am curious what you think. Are HOAs a necessary evil that keep neighborhoods from falling apart, or just a socially acceptable way for certain personalities to boss everyone else around? Have you ever had a neighbor, a boss, a landlord, or a board push you around because they thought you would never fight back? Tell me what you would have done in my shoes. Drop your stories in the comments, and let me know if you think what happened to Paula was justice, or if it still was not enough.